Call to order the City of Duncanville City Council for a special budget workshop. Today is June 8th, 2020, and we're beginning, as said, at 5:15. So thank you very much. So we've all got the agenda. Do we have any public comments?
No, sir.
There are no public comments. We're skipping item number 2 on our agenda, going to item number 3, the pre-budget workshop for FY 2021. Discussion of topics are enumerated on your agenda. Mr. Huckman.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. So tonight is what we call a preliminary budget workshop. We typically do this in early June. And the purpose of tonight is to look at the current year budget, the FY20 budget, and where we think we're going to end up the year. And also then to look at a preliminary view of the FY21 budget. And we typically discuss with you, get your input on things that we're looking at, potential long-term financial implications. Of course, this year we have a lot of new challenges. We knew going in that we would have the challenge with the 3.5% property tax cap. And then given the COVID-19 pandemic, we certainly have challenges with the economy right now with sales tax revenues. Before I go any farther, let me also mention that as I'm thinking about it, in the interest of keeping the numbers low in this room, we have other staff that are here. They're in the council chambers and they're watching this presentation. So if there are questions come up that we can't answer, that we need one of the department heads to answer, they are here. And they'll come over here, and then later on some of the presentations will be given by others as well. So we have other staff here tonight, they're just not in this room, so as you typically see them. So getting back again on the budget, and so what we'll be discussing tonight, we will be focusing mainly on the general fund. We'll start out with an overview, and then we will focus on the general fund, again, where we think we're going to end up this year, where we think what next year is starting to look like. Tomorrow we will focus on the utility fund and some of the other funds, all of the other funds. I'm going to go ahead and I will tell you right up front so that you're not anxiously awaiting the bottom line, and we will get into this more tonight. The bottom line for next year for FY21 is that it is a bare bones budget. There are no frills, there are no new programs, there are no one-time projects, there are no pay raises.
No dog park.
Pardon?
No dog park.
No projects, no extras, but it maintains the service levels that we have, and it is within the 3.5% tax cap, and it is with a drop in sales tax revenue, and with some of the other funding challenges that we will also get into. But it is doable, and we can do it with an adequate fund balance. Yes, sir.
So I really don't mean, I hope that this won't be taken flippantly, but it sounds appropriate to me based on the parameters you just outlined. So I don't know what more can be done. So, but let's go through the process anyway.
Well, I agree with you. In some ways, and as you know, when you have very tight years, it makes budgeting a lot easier sometimes. So yes, in a way, it's again, there's nothing new in here, nothing at all, no extras. And there are challenges, but we recognize those and we'll discuss those. But the main thing is Richard will show you, but immediately, we positioned ourselves for next year. Going into this pandemic, we made immediate changes, we made immediate reductions to try to position ourselves for the long term. So you'll see that this year we should end up pretty well, but that is also carrying over into next year, to where next year we can make this budget work with an adequate fund balance. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Richard, and we'll get into that.
Thank you, Kevin. So, what is going on here?
You're all the way at the end.
There you go.
Okay, there we go. Very good.
Sounds like the answer to my question.
I'll just skip right on to the end. So, what I wanted to do to
Make it a short night here.
start out with is to give you just a real quick overview. This is the total FY20 adopted budget expenditures by fund, and so there were 63.2 million, primarily general fund, utility fund, solid waste, field house, other funds, economic development, and a little sliver of red light money that is residual money left over that we're working on spending. The total FY20 adopted budget revenues by fund were 60.7 million. Again, most of those revenues went to the general fund, being property tax and sales tax being the biggest ones. And of course, utility fund and field house or enterprise funds, and then solid waste, economic development. Any questions about that before we move into FY20? So, wanted to give you a brief overview of the debt service because this is applicable to both FY20 and 21, but to give you an idea, we issued our general obligation bonds in 2019. We issued 21.6 million, but because they sold at a premium, we only incurred 20.7 million in debt. Our last payment is scheduled for 2039. The bonds are not callable until 2028, so that means that we can't take advantage of the favorable interest rates that we find ourselves in today, so we wouldn't be able to refinance until 2028. The annual debt service on that is 1.4 million, and the principal outstanding at the end of FY20 or the beginning of FY21 will be 20.3 million. 20.4 if you want to round that. Utility debt was retired during the fiscal year of FY20, so that's a good thing. We celebrate that. The field house debt, the last payment is due in August of 2025. The average annual debt service remaining is $537,000 per year. And the principal outstanding at the end of FY20 or beginning of 21 will be 2.5 million. The economic development debt, the last payment there is due August of 2021, and the principal outstanding at the beginning of FY21 will be only $485,000 left.
What is that debt? What is that debt?
On the economic development?
Yeah.
That debt primarily went to do the Waterview Park when it was issued. Okay. Moving right into the FY20 budget. What I wanted to do is to tell you that we ended fiscal year 19 in a better position than what we budgeted for. So I wanted to give you some idea of how we ended up in a better position than what we budgeted. Our FY19 revenues exceeded budget, and these amounts: $250,870 in permits and fees. $69,000 of that was in collected emergency medical services. $125,000 in the Texas ambulance supplemental payment. This is a thing that's very difficult to budget for. We don't know if we're going to get money or how much it's going to be until very late in the budget year. It's almost kind of, you don't count on it until it comes in. $52,000 in rental property registration fees. Then we had $138,232 in fines and permits. These were court-related fines. $319,000 in interest revenue, and that was just simply due to the fact that interest rates were very favorable and continued to rise during the fiscal year. $404,000 in other revenue. $144,000 of that were in some old liens. The Public Works Department got very aggressive about trying to collect those liens that have been on the books for some time. And so they collected quite a bit of revenue during that time period of FY19. $69,000 in workers' comp reimbursements. Did you have a question, Mark?
I mean, did they have to do anything differently to collect that amount, or they just?
They sent out letters. They put out a campaign to collect that, notifying property owners that they had these liens, and that, you know, reminding them that, because a lot of times these liens sit on the books until someone wants to sell the property, and then they have to satisfy the liens. And so they just got very proactive, sent out letters notifying people, telling them, look, you know, you're going to have to pay these liens at some point in time. If you, to your benefit, probably pay them now rather than later. And they begin paying them.
So don't let me jump ahead, but I do want to think about later on in the budget, will we have something there that will tell us what they will do in the next budget cycle year? Did that just happen, they just send it, or do we have to do a plan for that? Or later on in the budget cycle, will you tell us those exciting things that we're doing that we're different in collection?
I will tell you what we've collected so far year to date in FY20, and then I don't recall right off the top of my head. I believe we budgeted a small amount in FY21 because we are working these liens down. They're kind of like delinquent property taxes. You can work them, but it's real difficult without a whole lot of years of experience, and we don't have years of experience in this and knowing exactly how much. I'm sorry.
And also, just real quick too, I think our approach on code enforcement is a little bit different as well, in that we're not letting things carry over. So once a year, they're going to send notices to each of the outstanding lien holders, just to let them know and remind them, because interest is building on those liens. So just let them know that they have an outstanding lien. But also too, that I think we're getting a little bit more compliance before we have to go in there and abate the property where the lien is really originated, and we have to go clean it up. So I think our improvements on the code enforcement side have helped with that. So we're probably not seeing as many liens and going to draw down that overall budget.
So I think what I'm hearing is there's, at the end of the budget cycle, we won't have a one page or whatever to tell us, here's what we're going to do to increase our collectability on these things that's outstanding. It'll be just what you're telling me now. There's not a page in your document that will tell us that.
No, not necessarily, other than what Paul's just reiterated, that we continue to make these efforts. But outside of people wanting to come into compliance, there's no big stick that we can use to make them pay.
We won't see these kind of numbers again, though.
Right.
This was 20 years or whatever. There was a lengthy time period where the people didn't know the liens were out there. So we were collecting liens from 20 years. Now our intent is to every year notify people they have a lien on their property. So we'll see some payments, but it won't be like this. So we cleared, I don't know how many, over 1,000 liens, I think.
At least, I mean, yeah. So it was a good number. We drew down that basically that balance, and we can provide the balance to council as far as what's outstanding.
Yeah, I mean, every week in the weekly report when we were doing this, we had in there how many liens we were clearing that week, and the total to date. I don't remember now what that number was, but we were providing. So again, you're not going to see this kind of a number every year.
I mean, the goal ultimately is to get compliance and not have to do the
I was more so concerned with the plan.
Sure. Okay.
Remember too that we, as a council, passed a resolution changing our policy. Our policy was that this is how much you owe, you pay it or you're gone. And we changed it to allow the Director of Public Works to negotiate. Because as they're saying, we were cleaning the database of some 20 years of liens, and people come back and said, that's 13 years ago. I don't even remember I didn't cut my grass 13 years ago. What can you do? And then the old policy was, I'm sorry, we have no room to negotiate. And that's the way council passed it back then. We passed a new resolution allowing the Director of Public Works to negotiate and to basically make some compromises with individual citizens on a case-by-case basis. And that really helped resolve a lot of them that we had outstanding too.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so moving along, then we also had that contributed to FY19's ending fund balance. We had some variances and expenditures. So Parks and Rec came in under budget, $243,129. There was $107,566 in park ground maintenance. That was primarily in savings from water, electricity, mowing, landscape maintenance. We had $72,217 in recreation programming. This was primarily due to salary and benefits for vacant positions and savings in some fees paid for camp class instructors. We had $30,000 in special events. That was when we had to cancel the Christmas parade in December of 2018 due to the weather. We had $311,439 savings in public works. $264,000 of that was in streets. These were basically contracts that were underway and they were not completed and paid until FY20. And then we also had some electricity savings for street lighting. $72,536 in equipment services. This was less than budget vehicles for repairs, and declining fuel prices in FY19 also contributed toward those savings. So this is how we ended FY19. We ended with a fund balance of a little over $10 million in the general fund. So that's 123 days of fund balance, in excess of our target of just less than $4 million. So wanted to give you that to help set up for where we're going. So in FY20, as soon as we became aware of COVID-19, we began to make expenditure cuts in response to the pandemic. We had $1.1 million in general fund expense cuts. $599,000 of those cuts came from salary and benefits. We essentially cut part-time salaries and froze any kind of vacant positions that were out there. We had $68,928 that we had in travel and training cuts. And then we had $138,500 in park amenity replacements that were budgeted and landscape-related cuts. $21,000 in savings in fuel costs. $388,000 in miscellaneous reductions that span the gamut of electricity, postage, advertising, and a lot of other ones and twos and threes.
So you're gonna cut,
Sorry?
cutting the cut, oh, that's good, never mind.
I'm sorry, what?
I thought in the parks, go back, in the park cuts, what are you cutting in the parks?
The park amenity replacements. These are amenity replacements like new bleachers and things of that nature that they had budgeted. That we just did not feel like they were not absolute necessities, so we cut those.
We try to replace picnic tables, grills, various things like that. In each park, we kind of rotate out and just every year we replace a few, and we just deferred those this year.
So what happens to old broken down picnic tables that just get left or?
Well, I think overall, we're in a lot better shape now on the picnic tables than we were before. But, so we will still, replace the ones that, and we will plan on replacing them again this coming year. The ones we just deferred this year. So if they're in really bad shape, we will. But I mean, again, over the years, I think we've done a good job of getting all of our park fixtures up to better conditions.
Okay, so we also, along with those cuts, we had some expenditure increases. We budgeted $170,000 to transfer over to the unfunded portion of the COVID-19 related grants. And when we originally set that up, we did not know that we would get the CARES grant, and so there may be some portion of that $170,000 that would be covered under CARES grant. So that's good news. At this point, I'm not projecting how much that will be, but some portion. $152,000 increase. We had to repair the I-20 lighting due to the theft of the wiring. We had $190,000 increase to vacation and sick time payouts for resignations and retirements. So far, year to date, we've had 11 resignations and 2 retirements. We had $70,000 in the Shambyville demolition and tank removal, and $167,000 in medical insurance fund dissolution, because we're no longer self-insured.
Just as a sidebar, Kevin, have we heard anything from county on our 20% with the ILA going in?
Yes, sir. Tia emailed Charles. Tia, do you want to, what his answer was on that?
He said they've got everything from us that they need, and turned over the ILA, and this week they'll start processing. So payment hasn't been received yet, but should be very, very soon.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm going to let Jennifer talk for a minute about the medical insurance fund.
We typically would talk about the medical insurance fund on the next night when we talk about all other funds, but we decided to go ahead and talk about it tonight since the impact of dissolving the fund impacts the general fund, and those numbers will be shown to you in a moment. But just to kind of recap what the purpose of the medical fund was, when we were self-insured, of course the contributions would be the revenues to the fund, and then we pay those claims out of this fund. As you can see, kind of over the last 10 years, you can see what's happened to our fund balance. It would go up, and then when we have bad claims experience, it would go down. And the last couple of years, of course, we've gone down into the negative. And we would actually be further into the negative if it wasn't for council's decision to have a transfer into the medical fund to help offset that. So in fiscal year 19, we had a transfer in, and as well as in this current fiscal year, we had a transfer in. So since we are no longer self-insured, we did not think it necessary to continue operating this fund. As you can see here, there's a lot of numbers on this page. This is really just the fund summary of the last 5 years, the actual expenses. But being in the position that we are in currently in the general fund, to dissolve the fund, we project $202,000 from all funds would close out this fund. 167 of that is the general fund. So that is why we're proposing to go ahead and close out the fund now while we were able to do that. So, certainly. Do you have any questions about this?
You said you're proposing to close out that fund. Does that mean at some point very soon there's going to be something coming on the agenda for us to do that?
We are proposing this in the revised budget to go ahead and dissolve the fund, and all that means is the fund just goes away.
So
We no longer need to operate.
Passing the budget takes care of what you're proposing us
Correct,
to do.
that
So there's not a separate agenda action by the council to do.
No, sir, yeah, so the general fund will absorb a portion, as well as all the other funds will absorb a portion. That will, again, close out the fund. We won't project it. That will.
And instead of then having an insurance fund that each department is contributing to, what it will do is it will essentially put all of those medical insurance costs directly into those department funds in the personnel areas. So it's still there, it's just more clear now what each department is paying for that. But it's directly related now to the personnel in that department or division versus that department contributing an amount into the medical insurance fund. It's based on actual costs now, because we are fully insured now, not self-insured.
And it keeps it, like I said, more transparent within the accounting and all the different various organizations. Here, we brought in the revenue and it paid for the claims. It could have good years, could have bad years, but this will be pretty much apples to apples. So.
Well, when it was self-insured, we had to do it that way. We didn't have a choice from the county perspective because it became an internal service fund. But now that we're self-insured, it's not. I'm sorry, full insured. So moving along, the FY20 general fund, some of the major revenue changes. We had $991,000 sales tax decrease, and this was due to the loss of one of our major sales tax generators into Ford's. It's somewhat offset by new sales tax generators such as Papa's Barbecue, Mud Hut Bar and Kitchen, and some other smaller new businesses. Estimated COVID-19.
What's that somewhat? Can you give us a rough percentage of what's that somewhat?
If I had to assign a percentage to it, I would say perhaps 5%.
Oh, it's just a little bit.
That's just kind of off the top of my head.
Okay.
Not a tremendous amount. And then part of the sales tax decrease is our estimated COVID-19 trending. I wanted to explain to you the methodology that I used to calculate where we ended up going with our sales tax budget. So what I did is I took the total actual sales tax that we received from October 2019 through March 20, and that was a little over $5 million. So that's on the books, we've received that. And then I took the total actual sales tax that we received from April 2019 through September 2019, so that was in the prior year. That was $5.5 million. And so I deducted 25% of that based on talking with other finance directors, other people that are in economic development. 25% seemed to be a pretty well across the board consensus of how much we were going to be impacted. So that's 1.3 million, and that left us with a forecasted sales tax revenue for the remainder of FY20 of a little over $4 million. And just remember that this is the grand total of all the sales tax for the entire city. So 75% of that, of course, is allocated to the general fund. 50% goes in just normally. We have the election to reduce property taxes for 25%, so that's your 75. And then we've got 25% that goes to the Economic Development Corporation. Graphically, I wanted to show you how that looks. You can see that we had a pretty good upward trend from 2011 all the way through 2018. We had a little bit of a drop off in 2019 when we first became aware that we were losing this major sales tax generator. And then 2020, we projected quite a bit of drop off. And then later on, when I talk about the 2021, I'll tell you a little bit more in depth. But basically, I took 2020 as we've now revised it and dropped it another $100,000. That's our best forecast for how we're going to come out of this recovery. Based on the employment numbers that came out in the stock market, they seem to think that we're going to recover a whole lot faster than that, but I'm not a believer just yet in that. So continuing on with the other major revenue changes, 36,500 increase in permits and fees. This was primarily from a $50,000 increase in medical collections, medical emergency service collections. That was offset somewhat by some decreased health food permit fees. Those fees were things that were collected not on our brick and mortar restaurants, but on the food vendors that did the Main Street days on Saturday, and the other temporary events that, or events, I guess, special events would be the best way to say that. We had a $55,000 decrease in interest income, and of course that's all due to falling interest rates. The federal open market committee immediately responded to the pandemic by dropping the interest rates, and so we're looking at some very low rates out there now. 100,000 decrease in recreation fees, and that was related to closing the facilities for the rec centers. 146,221 decrease in other revenue. That's the loss of the Eon lease revenue.
Why is it 146?
Why is it 146? They made one.
Oh, that's how much, that's just the yearly rate, because so you're not, this is not.
It's actually 150,000 for the yearly rate, but they made us one small payment.
One small payment, okay. And so when is the rest of that going to come in, the loss? How's that come in?
Well, I don't know that I'm at liberty to speak about that.
We've already voted on it. It's already been out on the floor, voted on.
Well, when we get to the FY21 budget, you'll see that, again, next year's revenue is essentially assumed to be zero. So each year that's left in the term, until we settle and determine how this is going to fall out, we don't know. But we're going into it with the assumption we're not going to budget any revenue. Obviously, that will have to be hashed out, probably through court action, and then whatever that settlement is would probably be booked in a separate type of a line item, but we would be shown into where that is at. So this is just the revenue item.
So essentially, we're targeting.
I'm sorry. So if we evict them and get them out, then we get something else back in there, then we start to make up for this is what we.
Correct. It would be a new revenue then, so source for that we would be able to book.
So we're projecting to end fiscal year 20 in the general fund with an ending fund balance of 7.9 million. That's 91 days of fund balance. Of 1.3 million in excess of our 75-day fund balance target. So again, I feel pretty good about where we're going to end up for this year, despite the sales tax drop.
Rich, do you think, based on your relationship with anybody that's going on in the Federal Open Market Committee, as the market continues to recover, slight bit, I know they're not going to get back up to 29,000 now, but do they have any, are they talking about being able to increase any of our interest income on some of our investments in 21?
At this point, we're really not. I have been talking with our investment advisors and trying to come up with a good strategy toward stratifying, if you will, more of our investments into some CDs where we're locking in interest rates. They feel like that rates will remain very, very low, at least until the first quarter, probably in the first quarter in 21. That's their forecast.
Are we less than what happened, 1%?
I believe that the T-bills or the Fed funds rate, I believe, is 25 basis points. I think somebody correct me if I'm wrong. My pools are still paying about 66 basis points versus 25. So there's some.
Still we're paying.
We got a loan on a commercial property in this market for like 3.5% right now, which is like not ever heard of, never. I mean, that's like unbelievable.
But then, thankfully, I locked in a lot of our bond money and CDs for a longer period that will take us out probably past this. If we discover some recovery at rates that range from 1.25 down to 90 basis points. So I did stratify as much as I could at that point in time.
Thank you.
So what's the difference between the adopted and revised budget?
The adopted budget was what council passed, and then the revised budget is what you will essentially vote on when we get ready to adopt the 21 budget, because we have to look at it mid-year and determine the revisions, and I explained to you some of those changes that we had to make.
So the adopted budget, if we didn't make the changes, that's where you'd be projecting we'd go to?
The adopted budget was what we originally thought that's where we would be. But you also got to remember that when we adopted that budget, a part of the contribution to that is that beginning fund balance. You see, we budgeted to start out at FY20 with 7.5, but we ended with 10 million. That's why I explained to you all the reasons why we ended fiscal year 19 in a much better position than what we budgeted for.
And so tonight, whenever we adopt it, we'll adopt the revised budget. Whenever we drop the next year's budget,
Yeah.
we'll adopt that with it.
And keep in mind, tonight is a preliminary look at this, because we don't have property tax numbers. We don't have your direction on where we're going to go with the tax rate. There's a lot of things that will get solidified before we come back for the final budget meeting. And we'll also know a lot more. We'll have a couple months more history on sales tax. So when we come back to you for the final budget, we'll have more information.
Yeah, and this revised budget, again, too, is just where we think we are today, but when we file the proposed budget for FY21, it will include then the revised budget. Those numbers are probably going to change, because over the next month, 6 weeks, we're going to get a little bit more information on, like Richard said, the CARES Act. Right now, we've not budgeted any kind of reimbursement for our COVID expenses. We think we will. So we want to be sure of that, but we're probably going to budget some numbers in there, so that's going to change some of that expenditure revenue balance. There may be some other things that as we, over the next month or so, that we kind of refine those numbers in this year's budget. So those revised numbers are still going to probably change a little bit, but I don't think they're going to change drastically. Yes.
Richard, sales tax comes out this week or next week?
As yet, we will know Wednesday what our sales tax is for.
Day after tomorrow.
Rich, I just want to make a general comment, because I appreciate what y'all have done in terms of really making this budget kind of work. I mean, it's outstanding work with the staff and stuff to come up and to do something, to have it. We're really in a good position when things look bad. I appreciate the conservative approach that you've taken to make it happen.
Well, when I'll be honest with you, when Kevin started and he said he wanted a 75-day fund balance, I thought, man, that is just too much. It's and then the more I thought about it, and then now we're here today where we can really appreciate that. So it is a good thing.
I think where you will really see the impact is when we talk about the FY21 budget. And as I told you at the beginning, we've got a bare bones budget, but we can do it, and we have an adequate fund balance. And you'll see that then when we show you those numbers.
Okay, wanted to show you a few graphs here. This is the certified taxable property value. It is in millions, and so this shows you what the residential taxable value is versus the in the green part versus the commercial and business personal property. That's breaking that down into a percentage. That's about 66.6% of residential, 33.4% commercial and business personal property. And so based on where I estimate that our final certified tax roll will come in at, I drew a line there to show you how much the the property tax cap lops off, and don't have any way of showing that equally between residential and commercial, so I just took it off of the commercial part just to give you a visual of that, but certainly it's spread out between commercial and residential. And that represents about $973,000 in revenue. That is what will be capped at.
So that small portion, the light blue above that black line is $973,000.
That's correct.
In revenue, not just taxable value.
That's in revenue, not, I measured it in revenue
Yeah.
there, not in taxable value.
Right, got it.
Yeah, it's
dollars.
actually,
In city, that's
actually
city
much,
tax?
I'm
That's
sorry.
just, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's just city owned tax.
That's just city-only tax, $973,000. It's from the cap.
Yes, sir. And keep in mind that, and I'll explain, you'll see a little bit different number later on because you've got to remember that your voter approval rate or your rollback rate is at 8%. So I'm not putting that part of it on there, but we'll get to that in a minute.
Richard, can I ask you something here, and I still don't understand this, I think I tried to last year, but if you have a property out there, and it's on the tax rolls, let's say for $1 million, and it's got extra property with it, and you add $500,000 in extra property on that land, say you got a big piece of land, okay, and you add $500,000 in new value on it, are you capped, you're still capped on that piece of land?
From what it was in the previous year to what you can collect on it this year, under SB2, you're capped at 3.5%.
But if you add, even if you actually add the value, it's like you put more property on it, you put more building on a piece of land. So you have $1 million as a piece of property, and $600,000 or $700,000 of that is a building.
You're talking new
And you add new
construction.
construction on that same property, $500,000. Are you capped on that?
Yeah.
It's on the same platted lot.
New construction is parsed out of the calculation.
So you add that on then.
So that is.
Okay, so you-
Right.
so you could-
But I will also say that that also depends on the property itself and what DCAD looks at it, whether that is considered new construction or not. Now, if it's a totally new building, I think
That's what we
it
talked
should
about.
be. If it's an add-on to an existing building, DCAD might not look at that as new construction. If it's not new construction, it's subject to the 3.5%. New construction is parsed out of that calculation.
Even if it was on the same platted piece of property?
I think so. I think we've asked that question and we didn't really get a solid answer on it. But we believe that it would be treated as new construction.
So if we had a shopping center, had a big parking lot in it, and we added a new building on
Add
it, so that's
size.
the parking lot, add that on.
It should be. It should be.
Should be.
Going under new construction.
Okay.
But that new construction add-on for that particular fiscal year, does that create a new baseline for the next fiscal year? And then that, whatever that new construction was, the new property value is then added up. So the next fiscal year, you got a cap of 3.5.
That's right.
So then next year, then
You
it's.
get grace for 1 year is all you get.
But you add, you add 500,000 onto the tax rolls there from, or whatever the value of that was. That's my point, is you add 500 on, but you can't raise it again, I get that.
Yeah, that's a one-time,
Yeah.
it's a one-time benefit, yeah.
So what's happening with, when they send us a tax value now, and they double our taxable value on the property?
Well, they're just telling you that that's what they value that at.
You still
But-
can't go up at 3.5.
But for us, when we make our calculation for that voter approval rate, we capped at 3.5%.
I'm still lost with this, so.
Well, what'll happen is, what you'll see then is that 3.5% cap is gonna drive the tax rate down. So you will have to adopt a lower tax rate
So
to
if you
stay
have,
at that. And so then you, on your property, will get charged that lower tax rate, even though your property's valued more, but you're gonna be charged a lower
so
tax rate.
somebody called me and said, so I'm just trying to, excuse me for doing it, but somebody called me the other day and said their tax had doubled. So they have a $100,000 property, which you're paying about $3,000 a year, right? So it doubled to $200,000. So what do they pay? $6,000?
Well, it's going to be something less than that, but yeah.
Let's just assume
they-
it's $3,000 per
And-
100.
You know, without knowing all of the ins and outs, I can't tell you for absolutely for sure, but theoretically, they should take their $3,000 they paid the year before and add 3.5%, and it should be close.
For the city's portion.
For the, yeah.
But they're looking at their total tax bill and they're seeing 4 other taxing entities on there as well. And
Schools
the
are
school district one is gonna be
51%.
different.
Right.
Cities
So
and
you don't
counties
have-
are
those not
capped
capped,
at
it's just the city.
3.5%.
So about a third of it's capped, that's it. Okay. Okay. I'm starting to understand it a little bit. Go ahead.
So, I always compare Duncanville, Lancaster,
I'm
Cedar
sorry,
Hill.
I'm sorry, why didn't they cap the school and stuff, just the cities? Why didn't they just?
Oh, what, didn't you vote for that?
Well,
I don't think so. I don't know if I did or not, I might have.
they
Who
have
knows?
done something, and honestly, school tax rate thing is different. It's treated differently than, because the state pays an amount per student, so they get funding from the state as well. So how the state adjusts schools, I don't know. Maybe Councilmember Vera Cruz understands it better, but they treat schools totally different than cities.
And the county didn't get affected either?
Yes, they're capped at 3.5%.
Oh, they are
as
too?
well.
Okay.
I don't know about the community college districts, and I don't know about the hospital districts. I don't think that they were.
No, but they haven't gone up. They're just one of the lowest there is. Like,
Yeah.
But the schools, going back to the last legislative session, what the state said they were going to do was increase the amount of money they were providing to schools, and therefore telling schools you have to lower your tax rates. And there was some legislation, but I didn't keep up with it because it doesn't affect us. But that was the intent, was the state was saying, we're going to put more money into schools, so you need to drive your tax rate down. Whether that all happens or not, we'll see.
by the way, they've got more than ever, huge increase in kids signing up for community colleges. Biggest increase they've ever had. So that's their funding.
You just can't afford to go to.
So this next slide is the total taxable value per capita. It's essentially the total taxable value divided by the population for each of the cities. And what it demonstrates is that Duncanville has a lower tax base than the other cities, Lancaster, Cedar Hill, DeSoto, and of course Dallas. It's a huge entity, but I throw it in there to make some other comparisons.
So per population, that's per population?
Yeah, that's per person. Yeah. And so moving to this slide, it makes a little bit more sense because this is the total tax dollars that are paid out. And so if you compare per person, average of 483 in Duncanville, 605 in Cedar Hill, 672 in DeSoto, 708 in Lancaster, and then 850 per person in Dallas.
Are you using the 2019 populations by the state demographer for that?
I used the latest updated information that they had, and I'm struggling. I think it's the same one we use for the CAFR. I don't remember the source exactly. Do you-
AHS?
The S3.
I'm sorry?
The S3.
Yeah, Esri, yeah.
So-
Yeah.
So we're providing the same services as the other guys for a lower price
Absolutely. That's-
because we have less money.
Well, we have less taxable.
We have less taxable value per person, so we have to provide it at a lower price.
We have a, yes. And
So
what
if we kept
also-
that number and had more taxable value, then we'd be doing real good, wouldn't we?
And we do it with a leaner staff.
So why do you think that we can do that? Because we're a tighter, I mean, I have my theory, but why do you think we can do that at a lower cost?
Well,
Just better?
because we have to.
Yeah, exactly. We have to.
We have, I mean, as Richard said, we do have a leaner staff, and we show that every year. Our staffing levels per 1,000 population, we tend to be on the lower end. So we have, so that, and personnel costs is one of our biggest drivers. And then there's probably other things as well in there that we, but we have to, because we don't have the tax base that a lot of other cities have.
So we're forced to do it, so we get creative and do it. Right? I mean, you do what, I like that.
Yeah, and I know that, there's things that we've been doing. I'll just take streets maintenance, for example. We've made a conscious effort over the last several years to increase our street maintenance. But not every city is able to do that, because I talk to my counterparts and I know what some of them are doing in street maintenance, and some of them have still not taken that on. They're trying to, but they haven't been able to do what they need to do. Not that we're doing what we need to do either, but we're able to do more of that than some cities. But they may be spending more in other areas than we are in those areas. So it's kind of hard to compare everything exactly the same. But overall, I think this says a lot that, we are providing all of the core services of a city, and we're doing it at less per capita tax levy than our surrounding cities.
And that's been the case for several years, right?
Yeah.
That's good.
Well, I think one of the reasons that we are is that we're tighter and we don't have as much sprawl in our infrastructure and things, so it's quicker, Our population's at 11.2 square miles, the same population in DeSoto's in 30 square miles. I mean, so you just got less.
Well, they've gone past us now. They have more people.
Well, they've been about the same, but even a little more.
Yeah, they've gone
I
past
think
us.
I think DeSoto
50,000.
is well above us now. I think
Yeah,
they're around
they have.
Yeah.
60,000, I believe.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so some of the general fund challenges for fiscal year 20, we've, as I've talked about, we've had a significant sales tax loss, and recovery from this pandemic is uncertain from a timing perspective. Again, I'll point out that Wall Street and the jobs numbers were much, better, and it's really buoyed the stock market. I don't know. I'm still just not believing that we're going to be able to recover as quickly as they're predicting. But nevertheless, we keep an eye on it, and we continue looking at the numbers as they come in. Restoration of deferred street maintenance and other building and equipment maintenance costs. Those continue to present challenges for us to fit those within the budget at appropriate levels, as Kevin just pointed out. Providing exceptional services with lean staffing levels continues to be a challenge. And then probably one of the bigger ones is compliance with unfunded regulatory and reporting mandates. That always creates organizational stress when you've got lean staffing and our fair compensation levels. I know just within the finance department, we get new accounting standards that we have to comply with year after year after year. And sometimes it's 1 or 2, sometimes it's 3 or 4. And it just continues to increase your workload. And of course, there's no additional funding to help with that.
I'd like to commend y'all on our street maintenance. So even though, with the intentional expenditure of those funds on street maintenance, drive around some of the other cities, and your shocks and your struts are taking a beating on some of the roads, some of the main thoroughfares. It's because people just aren't spending money. And you think, what are the things that we need to spend money on as a city? It's not just police and fire. When we look at infrastructure and saying that, the pipe bursting that we're doing so that we don't have those overflow, the SSO overflows, and then taking care of our streets and things like that, people are saying, if there's a pothole and we let the city know, in a day and a half, 2 days, that pothole's filled. Or if there's a major structure in our street that's beginning to cracking, notify our city, and it's taken care of within 2 days, maybe at the week at the most, because we take care of our streets, and I know it's a big, big expense. It's huge.
We have 3,430 people per square mile here. DeSoto has 2,400 people per square mile. So you've got more to cover with streets, more fire, more police, more water, more sewer. So that's where we have, DeSoto has 52,000 people in 21.6 square miles. That's 2,400 people. Cedar Hill will even be worse because it's like 40 square miles. Midlothian's got 92 square miles, and it's ETJ, it's even worse. They have worse problems.
Well, Duncanville is 0.74, our tax rate.
0.74.
And DISD is 1.4. And Dallas County is 0.12. So, and now you can see where a lot of that's, to you, the person you're talking to, school is 1.2. Huge.
When Rich throws up the pie chart on where our money's going, 52% goes to the school district. It's a monster.
Huge.
Okay, so that takes care of where we are in fiscal year 20, and we'll move into the discussion of the, I'm sorry.
The food is here. Food is here. So let's go ahead and grab our food.
And then reconvene and continue on.
Yeah, so what do you want to work? It never works to work through it. I never get y'all to work through it. So about, what, 20 minutes? Can we take 20 minutes, like 6:35, reconvene? Okay, recess at, what do we got, 6:13?
Yes, sir.
Recess 6:13, try to reconvene at 6:35.
Our department, they had a bit of a reorganization there with some positions that they changed around. 45,000 in savings from the planning position vacancy that we have.
So what does that mean?
What that means is that temporarily they're frozen.
On the planning position, it's just that we're not estimating that we're going to have that position hired by the first of the year. We're going to just keep it vacant for a little while longer and using the consultant who's filling in as a planner. So the cost, there's some cost in the contractual part of it, but overall there's a savings.
Okay.
So we're just looking at not filling that position right away.
Got it. What's his name again?
Rui, but I can't remember the first name. Andrew Rui?
Rui.
Yeah.
Rui, yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
The firm is master plan, so we could have any one.
Who are you talking about?
Planner. The person that did the planning presentation, or the zoning case presentation to you on that council meeting
yeah.
is with the contract firm Master Plan. So they're our planner since Chastity left. So they're here, providing a few hours every week or whatever we need for them to do that level of review.
So you didn't hire someone?
We have not hired anyone yet.
This is just a company?
Correct. And that's what we're saying, that's what that savings is we are not, even into FY '21, we do not plan to hire that position right away, that planning position. And so so there's some savings there. We will hire it, but not right away. Still just kind of waiting.
Okay, so some of the expenditure increases that we had $304,000 that we built into our group insurance. We had a preliminary estimate from our medical insurance company, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and they were going to be raising our rates substantially. And so we decided that we had to go out for bids. So we went and bid the insurance out. We're still expecting to have a double-digit 19% increase in insurance premiums. The bids are on the street, and they're coming to a close this week or pretty soon. So we should know the results well in advance of our next meeting for what we're looking at on medical insurance increases.
And why the big jump?
It's based on, past claims. That's primarily what they judge you on.
So it isn't across the board in every city, going up 19%.
Well,
Depends
insurance
on the
companies
cities.
basically increase something every year. 19% is, when I helped negotiate at our church, they were looking for 43%.
So there is a
So
PPO.
19% double digit is bad news, it's sticker shock, but talking about normal, the 35 and 40%.
Is it a PPO? What is
I mean,
it?
It is a PPO, and we have a high deductible health plan, so we have two, but as a reminder, last year, we actually had a rate pass. It didn't go up at all, so.
That's right. So did you got, what is the deductible?
For the PPO, deductible is $2,000, I believe, for the individual
Do
only.
you pay 100%?
No.
How much?
An employee only pays $70 a month on it, and I remember off the top of my head what the.
I think it's
at
at 80/20 or 70/30.
That's the co-insurance, 80.
Well, generally on our insurance, we look about 80% employer, 20% employee overall as a plan. So on insurance, Councilmember Jamison, it does vary depending on, when you're fully insured, it's going to depend on your claims history. There is what they call in the industry trend, and that is essentially what the average increase of health insurance is. If you had a good year, a profitable year for the company, there's still typically what they call trend. I don't honestly know right now what trend is. I don't know if you know, Jennifer, what trend amount has been, but usually it's been in the double digits percentage increase. So even if we had a good year, good claims history, we would still probably see some increase, usually around the double digits. And then, as we said, we've had some major claims, and so that they look at our claims history. But as Jennifer said too, when we went to Blue Cross Blue Shield, we got a rate pass last year, so we stayed with them. Now that was unusual to get a flat rate pass, but we had a good year the year before, and it was the first year with them, and yet they still gave us the rate pass. But this year now they were coming in a lot higher. So
We use Blue Cross Blue Shield too, and I pay 100% all of my employees. And we went from BPO to HMO this year because all the doctors had gone to those groups, and I said, I don't want my people to lose any of their doctors. But all these doctors have now are in these HMOs, and our deductible's $2,000, and there's no, and we saved 20%. Well, we were going to get a hike just like this, and we end up saving that money.
And we've been presented on some alternative options like that.
So I kept saying, I don't want an HMO, because I want our people, that's the one thing I wanted my people to have is like good health care. And we figured it out, and we actually had all the same, we could use all our side
it's
doctors.
important that you look at the physicians at your
Interruption.
the interruption, yeah.
Disruptions.
Disruption statistics. You can look and they can tell you who all the providers are that are being used and what percentage of those providers are in a new network. And it is something that you have to consider when you're fully insured or even self-insured is changing carriers every couple of years, because it can create that disruption. So we do look at that. We are, as Jennifer said, in working with our advisors, we've looked at different plans, and we've been working trying to get people to the high deductible plan. We've just not had a lot of success, but we continue to incentivize people to move into that plan through the premiums that employees pay. But we are talking with them about an HMO type that we may look at as a third option, or we may only offer that to new employees. So there's some things that we're looking at, again, to control costs. We talked with you last year about some changes that we were looking at making of moving spouses off the plan, and we're going to be doing that this coming year. So if an employee has a spouse who is on our plan but has health insurance available to them otherwise, then they will not be able to be on our plan.
Off, yes.
And so that's something we told employees last year. It was probably coming. We had the surcharge this year. Now next year we're going to be taking that next step. So we continually make changes to our plan to try to reduce the claims, because that's what drives your costs.
What they did at AT&T was they said you could stay with who they had, or you could move to Blue Cross Blue Shield, and the cost would stay the same, and the old one was going up substantially. So most of us moved to Blue Cross Blue Shield.
And so we had another $279,000 that is retiree medical expense that had to move over from the medical insurance fund. And then we had a $69,000 increase in IT replacement fund contributions. Our replacement fund is very much, for IT, is very much like in our fleet. We look at that year to year in terms of what the needs are for replacement, and we had been only funding that at a 30% of what the estimated real amount was, because we had a good fund balance in there in the previous years, but we had some things that had to be replaced, and so we had to increase that funding up to 80%. We're still only funding 80% of the total replacement cost.
Does that include all those water meters and stuff, or that's in the utility fund separate?
And we're at this point we haven't even gotten into that, but we'll talk about a little bit more about that tomorrow night. So some of the revenue changes in this FY21 proposed budget: $1,066,000 decrease in sales tax revenue. Again, it's basically $100,000 more than the $900,000 that are reduced the revised FY20 budget for. Potential new sales tax pending completion and opening. Starbucks, Thibodeau's Authentic Cajun Cooking, expansion, and some other tax generating businesses have some available leasing space. Don't know whether they'll be able to lease that out or not, such as the strip center in front of Winco, and then the former Chase Bank building, and then pad sites around a potential new credit union. So those are some things that could possibly help offset the loss. And of course, recovery from the pandemic. Then some of the other revenue changes we had: $624,000 increase in property tax revenue. That's what I estimate at the 3.5% limitations from Senate Bill 2. The $17,000 decrease in franchise receipts. Our telephone and cable franchise revenues continue to erode as people go to cell phone service and find other alternative, cheaper ways of getting TV other than the normal cable franchises. $84,500 increase in permits and fees, and that's due to potential credit union and car wash construction. along with increased emergency medical service fees collection. 49,000 increase in fines associated with a return to normal public activity, and that's based on people being out and about and incurring normal traffic fines, code violations, and that sort of thing.
We get a lot of money on speed.
I always contribute a little bit to that.
Thank you, Monty, we appreciate it. Continuing on, a 25,000 decrease in investment revenue. That's based on our continuing predicted lower interest rates, 45,000 decrease in rec fees, and that's again based on an uncertain amount of recovery from COVID-19 in terms of people coming back and using the facilities and having to special events, etc. 149,000 decrease in other revenue. Again, this is based on the loss of the EON lease revenue. And then some of the things that continue on in some of the other areas, 340,400 transfer to the medical insurance fund. It's not, we don't need that because we've dissolved the fund, so that's a decrease. And then we had a 425,000 decrease in our transfer to one-time project funds because we don't have any fund balance available to do that. 80,000 increase in transfer to the grant fund because every 2 years we fund the CDBG grant, and so it fluctuates some of that every second year. 265,000 increase in our transfer to street CIP, and that's to fund 50,000 for the road design for Beaver Creek, Swan Ridge, 75,000 for road design for East Carr, 61,000 on the Wintergreen Phase 1 payment to Dallas County, and then a 79,000 the US 67 Green Ribbon design.
Well, remind me how much, that's 61,000 for Wintergreen. Remind me how much, what's the total amount?
Mr. Ramey could probably tell you, do you happen to know, Jennifer,
The mill?
the total on the Wintergreen? I don't remember off the top of my head.
Okay, I'll stop with the question for today.
Here comes Mr. Ray.
Mr. Ramey's coming.
What was the question?
Total cost on the Wintergreen,
The total cost for all parts was 10 million. The current contract is about 7.5. The city, previously in terms of when we did the right-of-way acquisition and bought the signal equipment, that reflected $250,000. And then the 61,000 reflects the remaining cash that we need to pay in for our portion of the project.
Of the 250,000 or in addition to?
In addition to 250. So all in it was 316.
311? 360?
316.
16?
So you said 61,000 is the last cash portion?
Yes. Unless there's a change order or something that is spread out, but right now we haven't, I'm not aware of anything other than the 61K is what's left.
All right, thank you. I'll wait till you sit down and I'll ask another question. I'll wait till you sit down and I'll ask another question.
Oh, okay.
I'll pass you.
Okay, continuing on, 350,000 we reserved last year for the P25 radio project. We're going to hear a little bit more about that, but of course there's no additional funds that we have available to do an additional reserve for this year. And then 100,000 decrease in economic incentive payments, and that's due to our commitment ending in FY20. So, where we anticipate that we're going to end 2021 is with a fund balance, ending fund balance of 6.5 million or 72 days of fund balance. So that's 230,000 less than the 75-day conservative approach that we've taken. I'd like to remind everyone that GFOA best practices recommends a 60-day fund balance, so we're still well above that. So I think because of those cuts and changes that we made for the remainder of this fiscal year has positioned us to probably be able to handle the recovery and be in this much of a decent position.
And if I could interject one thing, Richard, kind of correct you, GFOA recommends 15 to 25%. Our policies are 60 days minimum, but a 75-day fund balance is right in the middle of that 15 to 25%. That's 20% of a budget. That's why we've always, since I've been here, shot for the 75-day fund balance.
So you said that's the, so you saying it's this percentage and not the days?
Right, GFOA's best practices guidance puts it in percentage. They recommend 15 to 25% of your operating budget be held in reserve. Our policy here has always been in days, and that's how we have always portrayed our reserve fund.
Okay.
But if you do the calculation, a 60-day fund, 60 days, it equates to approximately 15%.
Oh, that's
And so 75 days equates to about 20%. So my preference is to be in the middle of that band of 15 to 25%.
Okay, all right, thank you. Got
But
it.
this is what I was, so this is, to again, then to show you, this is where we are for next fiscal year. So this is what I was talking about at the beginning when I kind of gave you the conclusion, the ending of the story up front. With everything that's going on, with a 3.5% property tax cap, with a significant drop in our sales tax revenue, and with absorbing our medical insurance fund losses, we can still provide a budget for next fiscal year that's a no-frills budget, it's a bare bones budget, but it doesn't cut any services. And we can do it with very close to our target fund balance. Now what it doesn't do, as I said earlier, is there's no pay increases in here for employees. And while I don't know what other cities are going to do, we're hearing different things that some, including best Southwest cities, may be thinking of increases for employees. We also recognize that in this economy, a lot of people didn't have jobs. And so we understand that, and we understand where we are with this budget. And that's why we are bringing this with no pay raises. But I do want to say that, and I just want the council to remember that that is a challenge, and it will be continuing, because if we lose ground, it will hurt us in recruiting and it will hurt us in retention. And that means we will not be able to provide the service levels that you expect, because as we already said, we have a lean organization. We've already seen where, you know, we lose employees, good employees, because they have better opportunities. So we have always tried to be competitive, not at the top, but we don't want to be at the bottom. So what I'm saying is, right now, we don't have that in there. If the economy improves, if things start looking better in the budget year, my recommendation would be that the council consider perhaps a mid-year adjustment and to address that challenge. But right now, we are not advocating that we do that, because we are providing a budget with no cuts in services, and I think that is the important thing. And that is kudos to our staff here for immediately, taking actions when the pandemic began, and always, as you see every year we bring in, we tend to come in over the fund balance, because we're diligent about our expenditures, and we come in under our budgeted expenditures every year. So we have really worked hard, especially with the pandemic, to try to control our costs, to set us up for next year, and we have done that. And this is, I'm very proud to be able to bring this to you like this with a 72-day fund balance, and still under the caps and with the sales tax reductions.
So are you going to come back later and give us what those staffing numbers are? Or we'll know staffing wise, we know what the dollars may be. You'll give us staffing dollars, I'm sure. But you're going to tell us what the staffing numbers, to know if we're on staff with total number of FTEs or not on track? Total FTE? So what's our total FTE number is included in our budget?
Yes, so our budget is based on 100% staffing.
And that number is?
I don't remember.
275 full-time.
How much?
275
Full-time,
positions.
we're about 308 FTEs.
FTEs.
So we have not cut any positions. As I said, we froze some positions right now that we're not hiring for this year. Next year's budget is based on those hiring those positions, so the budget is based on, as if we had full staffing, because we are expecting the economy to turn around. We're already seeing things opening up again with the rec center, with the field house, so we know we have to staff back up for those things. So the budget is based on that for next year. So, but there are nothing new.
So the budget is based upon 275
Full-time
employees.
employees, yes.
Why not, you know, how you're doing with the planning director now, why not consider a town our size, consider more key positions like that outside, you know, consultants when you don't have, you know, that much overhead, you know, why not? Because, I mean, I personally do that with my own company because I found out I can be much more effective lean, and then I could bring people on and off as you know, as things go on. So I can always bring the best on. I don't have to carry somebody through, you know, through different times. I'm still employing people.
You're not talking about consultants, you're talking about people that actually do the job.
Yeah, I'm talking about people like a planning, like you're doing with.
I mean, that's what master plan. They are a consultant. They do consulting, but they also fill in and provide temporary staff.
Economic development. There's other things that can be done. That can be done.
Well, and we do
really
that. We do that right now.
But you're doing it in addition to, you have an employee and you're getting consulting. He's talking about one person.
Yeah, I'm just talking about considering that philosophy. I'm not.
So we do that right now. For example, a perfect example is the engineering design that we do. We don't hire and keep a staff of design engineers because we don't want to do that. It's easier to hire someone to do a road project design or to do a park design, so than to have a staff of engineers who do that. And
Why would you want to do that though? We've had them in the past. We've had employees that could do it.
Right, and your public works director and your assistant public works director were doing design work instead of being a director and leading the department and organize and all of the other duties that go along with that. So we have a lot of duties that are done and we don't spend our time doing, and you have to hire someone that knows design. You're hiring a design engineer. They may not be good in other things then. But
Well, I understand. In fact, I think it was Claire's husband was one of the engineers that we hired that could do the work. He could do the designing. And Cedar Hill took him from us. So to me,
You pay a premium though, because you can't hire engineers. Even graduate engineers are impossible to find, number one. Number two, you outsource it because you have to have a quick turnaround. So if you do design in-house, you can almost double the amount of time it's going to take to do design. When you outsource it, you can speed up the design. It does help in that. And you're not, you know, making benefits and so forth because they're able to also use the resources of their firm to be able to have certain functions where they just have an EIT doing one aspect of it, and then a seasoned engineer doing another part, so they can divide that work out. So you don't have a senior engineer doing all the work from survey all the way up. You can divide that up. You can save the money that way.
well, I hear what you're saying. There's a lot of people who like the other.
That's true, that's true.
There's a lot.
And when you talk about spending more to hire someone who can do that, you're spending more when you have a person and you hire a consultant.
But
You know.
against the number of projects that we can get out the door, that one person that won't be able to do that.
There's a balance that you have to strike with it, and that's what we do. And we do look at those things. And so what we're doing though, like with master plan, we're giving up things by having that one person that's only here X amount of hours a week. We're losing
You
some
also
of
might
that.
get fresh, better ideas from somebody that's not in the trench here every day. You might get a better,
Well, there are times when it is good and there are times when it isn't. So we're trying to strike that balance. And again, another example is the whole idea of the event planning that was discussed before. When we're looking at doing a major special event, we don't want to hire someone for that. Bring in someone, or we don't want to hire a staff person to do it and have that person on staff all the time. Just hire someone to do that specific scope of work, and then you don't have that overhead all the time. But there are times when it's good, and there are times when it doesn't work as well.
I just think we should continue to consider more and more, consider those, but it sounds like you are, so.
Yeah, I think so too. Instead of paying someone a lot of money for their education to delegate. I'd rather see somebody who actually could do it and understood it. And
Well, there's a lot that goes into leading a large department. And it's more than sitting at a desk and doing design work. And so I'll just leave it at that, but
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand.
Question on the pay increases. Civil service, police and fire, they have step increases built into their pay plan. Are those
They do.
Are those frozen as well, or
No,
you
those
can't
are-
freeze civil service?
You can't freeze that. So police and fire who are within that steps, within the, I think it's 7 steps generally. So if they're within that 1 step per year, if they are within that, they will get that automatic increase, and those are built into the budget. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't adjust that pay plan. So the starting salary for a police officer is not going to change. So if other cities are changing and increasing theirs, we're going to be behind, farther behind.
7-month-old, wonder if he's driving. Somebody took him.
Okay.
So, again, some of the challenges that we have with the FY21 budget. Probably the biggest thing is that we have a great deal of uncertainty as far as the economic recovery from the pandemic. This budget, as Kevin pointed out, has no new programs, no new projects. There's no civilian pay increases, no public safety pay plan adjustments. Maintaining services at the current levels was kind of the goal of this budget. I think we've achieved those. Maintaining competitive pay benefits continues to be a challenge as we compete with other public sector entities in the private sector to attract and retain employees. Providing exceptional services with lean staffing levels continues to be a challenge. And then again, our compliance with unfunded regulatory reporting mandates is difficult to achieve with our lean staff. And then restoration of deferred street maintenance and other building and equipment maintenance costs continues to present us challenges. And so with that, any questions, discussion?
Thank you.
I'll turn it over to the police department now to do an update on the P25 radio system update.
Can I say something? Can I say something right now? Just one. Given what we know about money and these things, I know this is not the budget, but it's policy. I think that we have to begin to look at what kind of things will make us a wealthier city, and what kind of patterns of development. And I hope that there'll be a time, sometime, that we can talk about that as a council. Some meeting where we can talk about some of those ideas, what those might be. Sure. I don't know when that's appropriate or how we can do that, but I think it needs to be sooner than later.
Probably actually it's September time, right? Right after the beginning of the fiscal year.
It's October 1st.
Yeah. Just prior to or just after the fiscal year.
Mayor, council, how's
Chief.
everyone?
Chiefs.
All right, so obviously Chief Roden and Chief Brown are here just in case we get along in this, and they may have something they want to accentuate during this presentation. So again, this covers, this is an update on the P25 radio system that we're looking to go to. Our current radio system, basics just as a reminder, the current system is over 10 years old. We have limited operability with, and that's just with our Southwest Regional Communication partners. We get much out to other law enforcement agencies or other fire departments. We really don't have much operability at all. Southwest Regional Communication Partner City, it's owned by us, so the city's put in for that. Public safety issues are that, as I mentioned just now, there are some areas that if we got into, say, a police pursuit, or if the fire department went over to give some mutual aid, or if we had a SWAT call out. I know our SWAT team annually goes up and trains with other SWAT teams from across the Metroplex, and we can't communicate with them. We cannot communicate with them. So natural disasters, we need to be able to communicate with people that are coming from other parts of the state. And so there are a lot of different needs. Inoperability is huge. So what is the meaning of inoperability? Well, again, the meaning is that we'll be able to communicate with local, state, and federal emergency responders. And ultimately, it means time, and that means saving lives in these types of situations. The upper left corner is a picture of just earlier this year when we had the issue at the Duncanville High School, where, as it turned out, fortunately, someone had just threw a firecracker that had been lit. And, but we had very quickly mobilized uniformed officers from several different surrounding agencies, and it was going to be very difficult to communicate with them. The lower left picture is a picture depicting the shelter at the K. Bailey Hutchison Center for the Hurricane Harvey issue we had just a couple years ago. And so, again, there were a lot of first responders down there standing that up, and we had a difficult time. Dallas had to pass radios out to us because we could not communicate with them. And in the lower right, the fire department does mutual aid regularly for other fire departments, especially in our best Southwest cities, but they could go to Dallas or any other department, and they need that interoperability. So let's talk about P25 and the basics of such a system. So P25, or Project 25, was a project that was, we figured out we needed to get better communication amongst ourselves as emergency responders. And this is something, APCO is the Association of Public Safety Communication Officials. It was founded in 1935, so they've been around for a while. And so they've studied P25, and they certainly advocate for it. It's a national standard for public safety digital radio. And it's a requirement for most federal and state grants. So the objectives of P25: interoperability, spectrum efficiency, so we have more frequencies to be able to speak to more of our partners, and then compatibility, with other radio systems that are P25 compliant.
When you say here requirement of most federal and state grants, are you talking about for any grant, or are you talking about a grant for that?
My understanding is that if the city wants to do any type of grant, there are some things that we have to check off on, and that's one of them. That are we, as a public safety sector, are we compliant with P25? So yeah, that's any grant that the city would go after, is my understanding.
Compliant, or it's available?
I'm sorry, can you rephrase the question?
Yeah, if compliant, that you have it, or that you have something that's compatible?
Yes, that we have it, and that we're compatible with others, first responders that we might interact with. So moving on, the P25 system that the City of Dallas and the County of Dallas are currently standing up, and they've been working on for some time. It's a joint effort, and it does promote state and national guidelines. It has regional interoperability, and once it's stood up, then it will have connectivity with Tarrant County, and we will have a coverage area over most of all of DFW. So the band space and the coverage will allow other cities that we can partner with and be able to do so easily.
How long does Tarrant County have theirs? Do you have any idea?
Can you help me on that, Sam? Do you know?
I know it's been up and working, and it's been up for several years.
Really?
Yeah, we can tell you several years. I don't know how long exactly.
But when you're talking Tarrant County, you're talking about all the cities within Tarrant County?
Well, so the Tarrant County system did what we're talking about possibly doing tonight, or trying to get guidance from you guys. as we move forward on this project. So they do have a lot of cities that they've allowed onto their system. And so, yes, they do have a lot of cities within Tarrant County that are part of that system.
So you're saying here that it is Tarrant County
No, so.
system, like the sheriff's department?
So the Tarrant County system is currently in operation. This joint venture between Dallas County and the city of Dallas is one that's currently being stood up. Infrastructure is being put in place as we talk about this. And once that Dallas system is stood up, it will connect with the Tarrant County system and give us coverage throughout DFW. Does that answer your question? So another proponent of this type of system or the project that the city and county are working on, the system redundancy. So they're going to have 29 towers throughout Dallas County, and they're going to have some fail-safes built into their system. So 2 of the main cores will be primary, and there'll be secondary components as well. So it's built for sustainability and adaptability as we move forward. And it provides a way that we can provide security overall to the system, which will include our weather alert towers. So that gives you a kind of a depiction, a pictorial depiction of the coverage area that will eventually come about. Within the square is what the Dallas system will be, and that the other yellow extending out from there is what we'll have more broadly throughout the DFW region.
So Ellis County isn't in it?
Well, not yet, but it is a very good possibility that Ellis County will come on, is what we're understanding. But I can't sit here and tell you that that's the case as we speak tonight.
Collin County isn't either?
As an example, Red Oak Fire Department, I don't know about the police department, Red Oak Fire Department is on the Tarrant County system.
Oh, it's on Tarrant? Red Oak?
In Midlothian, there is
On Tarrant?
So
It's probably because it's so expensive.
it very likely is, and that's
They're
kind
not
of why we're
maintain
bringing
their own
this to you in
system,
that
yes.
direction. So other city or user considerations as we try to get feedback from the council. As Dallas has proposed, a system user fee of $28 per radio per month. And so that includes system monitoring, system updates for the infrastructure, and system security. It does not include our own equipment, so our own portable radios, our own radios that go into vehicles, or maintenance and replacement costs. It does not include programming costs for that equipment. And it does not include equipment that is needed that will, if we choose to do this, that will cost share with our sister or Southwest Regional Communication tied cities on cost sharing for components needed by dispatch. Yes, sir.
So those elements that you just spoke of will have to be funded by us?
Yes, sir. What is not included would need to be funded by each individual city.
How many radios do we have?
How many do we have or we need? I'll get to that in just a second if you give me just a moment.
So to answer your question, Councilor Harvey, we will also be responsible for the annual cost. So what the user fee. So that is an annual cost. But what the gist of tonight is and we basically presented this last year as well too, the user fees and then equipment. We didn't know last year what kind of costs we were looking at for equipment. Now we have better numbers, and so that's what we're going to talk about. So we have the annual, and then we have, this is the one-time upfront equipment costs, and that's what we're going to get.
Okay.
But I just want to make sure that you understood that we also have to pay that monthly user fee as well. And that will be based on the number of radios that we have in police and fire.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. President. So And the P25 standard is compatible with most manufacturers. So the analysis of the Dallas system or possibly standing up our own system. With the Dallas system, we do, as Mr. Hudman just pointed out, we do have user fees on an annual basis for which we're responsible. But Dallas builds and maintains the system's infrastructure. So all the towers that are going up, I know, I think it was about a year and a half ago, we had to put amplifiers that were not budgeted on a tower, but we needed them in the middle of a fiscal year, and each city had to put up some funding that we didn't anticipate. But in this case, if we went with this system, then Dallas would build and maintain the system's infrastructure. Now, if we decided that we wanted to look more closely at a Southwest Regional Communications Center partnered city-owned system, then we would pay the cost to build and maintain the system infrastructure. The initial build-out alone for such a system is anticipated at $9 to $12 million. That does not include the equipment cost initially to step off. So we do not have a dedicated radio person. If we went to this, we would probably have to hire one or two or several to maintain such a system. So, but again, as I put down at the bottom, regardless of which way you guys want to give direction, we're still going to have to pay the cost for the hardware, the maintenance. Won't be user fees if we went out with the own system. But that's regardless of which way we go.
When you say between 9 and 12 million to build the infrastructure, is that for this city alone, or is that shared with how many cities?
So it will be our sister cities tied by Southwest Regional Communications Center. And that is not as vast a system as what Dallas is looking to put up. It's a very expensive proposition.
But you're talking about Cedar Hill, Duncanville, DeSoto, Lancaster.
Lancaster's not really in this conversation right now.
Three cities, DeSoto and Cedar
Only
Hill.
the three? You didn't invite Lancaster, or they don't want to?
They're not, they have their own dispatch center. They are looking at combining with Southwest Regional, but they haven't made that decision yet.
So that 9 to 12 million is divided by 3 cities.
Provided they agree.
Three.
Well, I think we've all got to vote, because if they vote to go to Dallas, then they're out anyway. But if we'd all have to.
The three cities are looking very strongly at the Dallas system, and it's because it is a much broader system, as the chief just said. Even if Southwest Regional, we built our own, it would only be for these 3 cities.
Oh, I understand.
So, and probably ought to just go to the cost so that you can see what the comparable cost is.
Show me the money.
So real quickly, just the timeline, we'll get to that, and if you just bear just another couple minutes. So here's the timeline, kind of what we've been doing. This, again, is just an update. So we've been working toward this. Dallas tells us that in January of 22, they expect to go on board with their system. So again, leading up to this, a couple of the things that I really want to accentuate is there in the summer and fall of 19, we began to do some long-term budgeting. And then in spring and summer of 20, we had the general funding figures were obtained, and that's what Mr. Hudman just mentioned, that you'll see in just a few seconds. And then in 2021, we anticipate beginning to procure and test equipment if this is the direction we're given. And then again, with Dallas going on in January 22, we've been told by them they anticipate that they will bring us on if we're so interested in March of 22.
Is that the same timeline they gave you last year, or is it off? I would call it timeline.
I don't know that a timeline was given necessarily. I didn't put it together last year, I don't believe.
There was a timeline.
Yeah,
And they had to move it out. And they had to move it out because they discovered that some of their towers are not capable of sustaining the equipment that need to go on them. So they moved it from, it was like a year before this timeline up to a point where it's January of 22. And then before we could ever go on the system, they would want to test it. So we would have to have our equipment, say, from October to December. We have to order in October to get it in December so that we can start testing our equipment and programming it to be able to come on that spring of 2022.
All right, thank you.
So here are the numbers. As you can see toward the top of this slide, I've got our police department, our fire department, our emergency management function, and a total. So if you look at the total, it's 196 radios that is being proposed. And then once you go through that, you've got the cost of, again, the radios and accessories, the cost of programming, and then the user fees for the first year represented there as well. So the number of $988,256 is what we anticipate we would need just for us to start off initially. And then at the bottom portion of this slide, you see what is needed by Southwest Regional Communications Center. Now, that does not represent our cost sharing. That is the total. So they've got some consoles represented there, and some of them will be in a primary location, some of them will be in a secondary location for redundancy if we had a natural disaster or some issue at the primary location. We could easily move into our backup location and continue with dispatch. There are programming templates, programming, station alerting, which is for the fire department. If they may program lights or some other feature that gives them a more obvious understanding that they are needed at that point if they're not real close to the radio. So that's what that is. And then there are data circuits going in from the Dallas system to the primary location, and then going back out to the Dallas system, as well as the same thing for the backup location. So again, that total you see down at the bottom, with user fees included for the first year, the 2.97890 is a total cost.
So if we take 1/3 of the regional cost and roughly call it $1 million, and the 988, call that another $1 million, rounding it up, we're looking at, well, there it is, yeah, $2 million.
So
Unless the other years cost more. We don't have the 4 years on here.
When
this
would we have?
is the upfront cost for the equipment.
Yeah.
Oh, they
So,
got that on the next
This
page.
is the build. This is the build out.
Yeah.
This is the $2 million build out.
So what we're comparing here, to go back to your original question, Councilmember Jamison, so when we looked at Southwest Regional only system, you're talking about $9 to $12 million to build a system. And excluding our portion of our equipment, because we would have that regardless of whether it was Southwest Regional system or Dallas system. But you're looking at 2.9 million split among 3 cities versus 9 to 12 million split among 3 cities, by going with the Dallas system.
And based on the timeline, this money needs to be available sometime in fiscal year 21. Is that right?
We would hope to have the money available for equipment, procurement of equipment, stepping off fiscal year 22, so October of 21.
Well, no, that's when you said that Dallas would be able to bring us in as 22, but we're going to be testing equipment in 21.
Yeah, so if we anticipate going on to the system in March of 22, if we can begin to procure equipment October of 21, that will give us time to get the equipment, to begin testing it, and that gives us 6 months.
So that is fiscal year 22.
Yeah, October of 21 is actually fiscal year 22.
Right, so it's not this next fiscal year, but it's the fiscal year after.
And that's if Dallas is
If they
on
stay on
time.
Right, if they stay on target.
So what we're trying to do though is again show you what's coming up.
Yeah.
And that was what we did last year. And so we've allocated $350,000 right now that we have reserved for this system in the current year budget. But that's all we have allocated for this. So we'll talk to you about the funding options then too. I think is the next slide. Isn't it?
So on the number of radios and accessories, is that a flat number including any extras you may need, or is that including the extra accessories?
So So the numbers that you see include both some radios for various vehicles, and then also portable radios like we're carrying here on the hips. And then we do have some extra in emergency management, just in case we got somebody that did not already have a P25 system that had to respond to a natural disaster or something, for instance. We could have a small cache of radios that we could provide them and communicate with. Because not everybody, if we had simultaneous issues, as a region we were dealing with, everybody may not come from Dallas. We maybe pick them up from further and more rural areas.
Perfect.
So how many would that be? How many do you keep on the side?
I think we have represented here 10 extra in emergency management.
Councilman Jameson, that would be, for instance, like your CERT team. Do your CERT team come in? We would need to be able to communicate with them on some type of emergency. Your Red Cross team to come in, we want to be able to communicate with them. If DISD is not on the system, then we would have to have some kind of capability to talk to them. That's why we have allocated 10 extra radios to split up those groups.
Well, I would think with the kind of tax revenue that the school system is bringing in, that they ought to cough up their own equipment. Excuse me.
We have had discussions with our ISD and the chief. I think maybe they're just kind of waiting to see which route we take and how that goes.
We'll give them that benefit of the doubt.
So as Mr. Hugman mentioned, we did try to look at some possible funding options for the council's benefit. And Richard, you might want to speak to this a little bit.
Sure. So basically what we did is we talked to our financial advisors, and they estimated what type of interest rates that we would be looking at for the 2.9 million in order to get proceeds out to fund this. And we looked at a 5-year, 7-year, and a 10-year. The 5 and 7 would probably be tax notes, and the 10-year probably would be a CO. And the interest rates you can see there for 5-year at 0.89, 7-year at 1.02, and a 10-year at 1.24. And then they went ahead and showed what the current market rates are, adding an additional 50 basis points should the market interest rates recover some, and then an additional 1% should they recover even more. I think, based on what I know, if we issued that debt, we're probably going to fall in there somewhere in the 50 basis points increase.
But Rich, the 2.9 is the total with no sharing on the SWRCC versus our obligation is 1.9. So why is this matrix built on 2.9?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So that was the number that we were working with our financial advisors on, but you're right. And this is just to give you an idea of what the debt service would look like. So
we wouldn't be going out for 2.9.
No, we would not. Well, we would not. But what we're having discussions with is DeSoto, since the dispatch center is under DeSoto.
Got it.
What we're hoping is DeSoto will be able to issue that debt, and then we pay our share of the debt service towards it.
Are you kidding?
What? Well, I don't know why you say that,
Yeah,
but I will also add that we know that DeSoto's, I think, close to their bond capacity.
Yeah.
And so that's why is that what you meant? Yeah, well, then so we're not sure they can do that.
They're looking into that now.
They're looking
into that now.
But so if they are, then our share would be 1/3 of that.
Right.
Now, what we would also want to do is piggyback on that bond, if we can, to finance our portion of the equipment as well, so that our portion is also financed out over 5 or 7 years. So you would add a little bit more to 1/3 of this for that.
And you're talking a CO versus a GO, so we wouldn't have to go.
If we could do a
CO.
certificate of obligation, yes, that would be the, I think, preferred, although there's been changes in that as well. Now, the advantage to that too, the financing it out is it lowers the upfront cost, but it's also not subject to that 3.5% property tax cap because it's a debt. So debt is separated from that. It's not coming out of that O&M amount. Or eating into that O&M.
What's the lifespan of the equipment, do we know?
When I talked to the financial advisors, I asked them what the typical lifespan that you finance radio equipment, because the technology does change, and they say 10 years is pretty much the max. Probably the average is about 7.
I talked to a radio guy the other day, and he said, having that equipment for 10 years plus is no problem at all. The radio manufacturers understand that most of these cities can't afford to sit there and renew their radios, so they make old parts. When I say old, 7, 10-year, 12-year-old radios, they're still providing parts and service for those radios, so that radio system itself will last a long time.
Everybody get that recorded? Can we remind you of this?
I'll be going in
There-
10 years.
So having said that, maybe we've already gotten into the discussion.
We have to go dig you out of retirement and remind you what you said.
So there is another matter, that there is some debt that the SWRCC does have on their previous radio system, so that would also have to be rolled into whatever that debt, ultimate debt would be for the new system. So they're still paying off on that. I don't know the exact payoff amount, but that does exist.
So the purpose of this tonight again too was to just show you what's coming up on the horizon. It's not impacting right now next year's budget, the FY21 budget, but we wanted to make sure that you were aware of it. As we said, we do have some funding right now that's reserved towards this system. Police and fire departments are working with the other 2 cities and with Southwest Regional to hone these costs, to nail down these costs, to look at a vendor. There are some different options on vendors, and figure out how to move forward with the funding of it. But as you can see, we do believe that going with the Dallas County system is the preferred option over us building our own in Southwest Regional. We think this is the way to do it. It's also subject to Dallas County's timeline in getting the system operating.
So we have $350,000 corralled for this already. Why can we not include in our budget, as lean as we have to be, another $350,000 for FY21?
Because we don't have that funding available. That was what we took that out of excess fund balance, out of it was a one-time project.
It was a one-time shot.
Fund allocation. We have no excess fund reserves for next year, so that's why there's no one-time projects and why we have no funding. Otherwise, we had hoped to be able to set aside another tranche of money for the P25, but we don't have that available.
So hypothetically, if a CO is issued, we would take that $350,000 and put it immediately toward the principal of what our debt share of that CO would be.
Well, no, I think we would just not fund that. We would cash fund that portion of it.
Issue less debt.
Issue less debt. Because it'd make no sense to,
Pay interest on it.
yeah.
Got it, okay.
'Cause you're not,
You're just saying instead of 2.9, instead of our share being 1.9, our share is going to be 1.3 something. I'm sorry, 1.6 something. Yeah.
that would be.
Roughly. Yeah. Okay. Got it.
This one, well, just a couple of things, obviously, you know where I work at, but probably the biggest thing of it all is the communication between all the departments, and the safety is the number one thing. It's so that you can communicate, en route, when you get there, so on and so forth. So it is very, very important first, and then secondly, again, when you talk about recruiting retention, that's one of the big things you look at. How safe is the member, the department member or the fire department member, so that's all I can say.
Well, the key is the interoperability, that's the whole thing. I mean, if you want to do a study, a quick read on interoperability failure, read what happened during Desert Storm.
You think we don't know?
The Air Force, the Marines, and the Army could not communicate.
For Dallas.
General Schwarzkopf was sitting in his tent, couldn't communicate with all the services at one time. The commander-in-chief of the entire operation could not communicate with the four services. Total failure of communication. It's amazing we did what we did out there. So there's where interoperability comes into play and understanding it.
I would just think that why though wouldn't like Ellis and Cullen and the counties around expand because they don't just stay right here. Emergencies and bad guys.
Well, there is some expansion, and that's why the cities out in Tarrant County, for example, are on that system. There's another system out in the eastern part of the Metroplex, like Rowlett, and some other cities out there in Garland.
Cullen County, that's where all the growth is.
They're doing some of that as well. But, you know, we're at a point we have to do something, and that's why we're trying to give you guys an update to give us some direction on what it is that you'd like to see us do to address this.
Chief Levine, that other system you're referring to is Saxony, Darling, Mesquite, Ball Springs, Seagoville, and Sunnyvale.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks, Chief.
All right, we're gonna now have a presentation on the cost benefit analysis of transitioning to the Tri-City Jail, or the possibility of transitioning to Tri-City Jail in DeSoto. And first I'd like to point out that Chief Costa from DeSoto is with us tonight, just in case we have any questions. And also with Chief Costa is Brett Evans, he's their jail commander. And so if any questions come up, we want to make sure they're present. Chief, did you want to say anything on this one?
So the easy question to Chief Costa is, y'all agree with this?
Yes, we do. We'd like to have you on board, and we'd like to be a win-win for everyone.
Okay. No sense in going all the way through and then go, well, we don't want to do this.
No, we're all for it. We support it very much. Thank you.
Mayor, I'll assure you, we've been in contact.
Well, I know. I mean, he wouldn't be here if he hadn't been here. I just want to show up and play games tonight. Good idea.
All right, moving on. Just to give you an idea of the Duncanville Police Department holding facility, and sometimes that's called the jail. A holding facility is kind of a jail, Texas corrections term. As a holding facility, we need to get our folks, and we strive to get our prisoners to either the county or out of the jail within 72 hours is what we strive. So here in Duncanville currently, our holding facility can hold up to 21 arrestees. But if at full capacity, we've got 10 that are on mattresses on the floor. 5 authorized full-time employees. And we do have an Astro van, as you see pictured there. It's a 1997 model. It is only used to run errands for like laundry cleaning, because we've got to give them each inmate a blanket. It's very cold back there in the jail at all times of year. And you know, we do get food for the prisoners in jail. So we have 3 part-time magistrates that rotate responsibilities. And on a last 2-year average, our department's averaged 1,159 adult arrests. Because also keep in mind that in this holding facility, we only intake adults, so 17 years of age or older. And our holding facility currently has 1,761 square feet of space.
That's one person per cell?
I'm sorry?
That's one person per cell?
Yes, sir. If we've got 10 cells, if we doubled up, it would get us to 20, but we also have a detox cell if someone's experiencing some, coming off of some intoxicant and they're having withdrawals or they're being combative, then
But how
we'll put them in there where they don't have anything extra to hit their heads on or whatever.
How often are you full?
How often are we full? Not very often, because we aim not to be full, as far as trying to make sure that, we minimize any liability within the jail, for instance. But again, we make, on average, 1,159 arrests a year over the last couple of years.
Do you put them all in there, or do you haul them to the county, or you haul them next door?
Well, it's a process. So typically, if we bring somebody to jail, we have to do some paperwork if they have a county-related charge. And so we have to do some paperwork to then get what's called a probable cause affidavit and a warrant. And then one of our magistrates would review that, and they would say yes. Because there's some certain instances that we can make arrests without a warrant already being in hand. That gets into the Code of Criminal Procedure, and it gets really into the weeds. So unless you really want me to,
No,
keep them.
thank you.
No, but you know what? We've got this building that Eon is leaving, that is part of the city's buildings. And I think that that's something that we should be looking at too, to expand in. I know the finance department's crowded, you're talking about the police department, and then we were given the building across the street from Dallas County. So,
Well, we're gonna get there. Hold it, that's a good thought.
All right, so our current facility, we've operated some sort of jail to some degree since our existence. It came to be in 1959. The physical characteristics of our current facilities, again, 10 regular cells, 1 detox cell, 17 and older. We do 1,100 to 1,200 arrests a year on average. It's in decent condition, 1,761 square feet, minimal maintenance, sliding door adjustments, some adjustments to solid port doors, and we painted the interior of the jail in 2018. Staffing-wise, again, we have 5 full-time employees, 1 for each patrol shift, and then we have a relief PSO that does most of the errands, and we'll fill in and try to allow for vacations and things like that. However, even with that, if somebody needs a day or 2 off, it's not very easily done to put somebody that typically is a relief PSO and put them on nights just for a portion of the week. So sometimes we do have to staff our holding facility with police officers. And so, that does happen from time to time. And then down at the bottom, the chief mandates, as is in line with best practices, that anytime anyone is held in our holding facility, then it has to be staffed. So the financial cost, kind of real quickly there at a glance. So what you see toward the top, where I have on the left, police detentions, and then on the right, 319,723. That's what we formerly budget for detention services. And so then the next line, police, and then patrol overtime. We've looked at those numbers, and over the last 2 years, we've averaged just almost $10,000 a year in overtime to staff the jail. And then that bottom part, municipal court, professional services, magistrates. So that $35,000 represents money that is budgeted in the municipal court, not in the police department, but it's for the magistrates to deal with those individuals that we have in our current or our holding facility. So the overtime and the magistrates are estimated cost. And again, the magistrate services, they do not include our magistrates reviewing at-large warrants. And what those are is if we are able to substantiate probable cause that someone committed an offense, then we can't find it immediately. And we come back and we do what we call an at-large warrant. But then we have to put that to a judge or a magistrate, and they have to sign off on it before that warrant is actually issued. So that's something that we'll still have to do even if we go to this solution. And then we also have search warrants that they would still need to review, and occasionally subpoenas for phone records or different types of things. But that $35,000 is conservatively a number that we feel comfortable with that could go away if we went to this. So if you took that whole total, we're looking at about $364,000.
Well, would that over time increase if the more people you're having in jail and you're having to take over to the other jail in DeSoto, would that over time increase because of the booking time?
Well, I mean, there is some consideration with that, but as I'll point out in just a second, Cedar Hill has been involved, the Cedar Hill Police Department has been involved with the Tri-City Jail, I believe since 2002, and the Lancaster Police Department even predates the facility over in DeSoto. So some of the things I've heard from my counterpart, for instance, over in Cedar Hill, is there was some resistance by their personnel when they initially went to it, and but they wouldn't go back now. It's minimal, and that may be kind of, you're right, it could be kind of a wash with the overtime that we spend up there, maybe not even that much. And then that last thing, the van, again, it's just used for errands, but it does need some repair, and it's not in the fleet rotation plan that the city has. So the holding facility financial cost, so liability cost, that's difficult to quantify. But what I've done is the first bullet point, over the last couple of years, we have had at least 2 individuals attempt to hang themselves while in our holding facility. Fortunately, an alert staff prevented that from happening. But the next bullet point shows you settlements of, with cities that it has happened. So it's difficult to quantify, but it is a real possibility. And then the cost of space. The current police department facility, the space is very limited, and we're growing. Fortunately, we're on a good track, and we've been able to hire some folks and get our hiring up and our numbers up lately because of some of the things you as a council have been able to provide to us. So, but we've got different types of storage needs. Evidence storage is constantly increasing. It's changing, and we can only expect it to change even further in the future. And citizens demand better access and interaction from the police departments. So, if at some point in the future, we might be able to free some space up and reimagine the space that is there, maybe we could, do something in that effort. And then, so the final bullet point there is, at some point, do we entertain a new facility, or do we make space to try to figure out how we more efficiently reimagine the current facility, and how does that look?
We don't want to make it too pretty. They don't want to keep coming back.
I'm sorry?
We don't want to make it too pretty.
Yeah.
They want to keep coming back.
So in contrast, the DeSoto, or the Tri-City Jail, as it's currently called, there's some photos contrasting what I had of ours. It currently can hold up to 55 arrestees. Typically, Chief Costa has mentioned to me that they typically are no more than at about 20. And they have 14 current full-time employees. They have 2 vans that reserves use to typically transport any prisoners that need to go to Dallas County, for instance, or pick up other prisoners from other agencies if need be. And the arrest total 2-year average for all cities that use the Tri-City Jail is about 5,600 for the year.
So the 2-year average that's the average number of both years?
Yes,
Okay, good. I was thinking, they don't stay there 2 years, do they?
And they have
Get them out.
They have 8,600 square feet, comparable to, it's not comparable to our 1769. So to give you an idea, I spoke to it a little bit earlier. The police department's currently contracted with DeSoto for this, and I tiered the agencies because that's kind of how DeSoto has their agreements with the agencies. So obviously DeSoto Police Department is part of this, and they average about almost 1,700 arrests over the last couple of years. The Lancaster Police Department, again, their partnership with DeSoto predates DeSoto's current facility, and they average 1956 arrests over the last couple of years. And then the Cedar Hill Police Department, they average 1545, and those three make up the Tier 1 agencies. And so they are viewed as partner agencies, and they have an equal cost among them. The Tier 2 agency at this point is only Glen Heights, and they are fairly new within the last year and a half or so at the Tri-City Jail. And so I only have 2019 arrests up there, and they were at 238. And then the Tier 3 agencies, they are charged on a cost per arrest basis, and the number of arrestees for fiscal year 18 and 19 combined were 46, so that's kind of the reason for that. Chief Costa, if need be, could speak more to that. But those agencies are Cedar Valley College Police Department, Lancaster ISD Police Department, University of North Texas Dallas Police Department, and the Methodist Hospital Police Department. So again, at a glance, and to try to contrast this all for us as we look at it, currently we're at about $365,000 total for fiscal year 20. And the Duncanville police officer, the proposal for 21, fiscal year 21 from DeSoto is that we come in for fiscal year 21 at $270,000. The cost of coverage is the Duncanville police officer has to assume jail duty in the absence of what we call a PSO, or public safety officer. Also, the Duncanville emergency or EMS, medical response, on average over the calendar year 18 and calendar year 19, they had 71 calls for service to our jail. If we contrast that, if we were to go with Tri-City, then our officers would not need to supplement a jail function, except if our prisoner had to go to a hospital and we had to maintain custody while at a medical facility. And then, other than doing mutual aid support, the Duncanville Fire Department would no longer need to respond to our jail. Current staff is employed by the city of Duncanville. If we went with the Tri-City solution, then DeSoto would make a good faith effort to retain 4 current city of Duncanville public service officer employees. The cost of space, again, we need more room. That's not going to change as we move into the future. But this does free up some space that we could possibly reimagine for other needs. And then the cost of liability, we cannot totally be relieved of that, but it certainly does reduce the exposure of our liability in a jail setting. And then control, if we maintain our own facility, we retain the ability to control our jail operations. If we don't, then we have to abide, and it's in an agreement by policies of the DeSoto Police Department. So having said all that, moving forward, in FY22 and FY23, our cost on the cost sharing will increase to $310,000. There'll be a 3-year agreement stepping off, and that's kind of where we are on that. So moving forward, we're just trying to figure out from the council what direction you would like us to go on this. And then, we've got some things, if you want to go to the Tri-City Jail solution, that we would need to do, which is obviously we've already had conversations with our current employees. And I think many of them have visited the DeSoto Jail. It's very delicate, obviously, with current employees. We need to be cognizant of that. And then we would look to assign PD command level liaison responsibility going forward. And in the transition, we need representatives from the police department, municipal court, and finance as well for bond issues and things of that nature.
So I'm gonna go back to my other question. I do like the plan and the consideration, but I do want you to explain again the transportation from the officer taking the person from Duncanville to DeSoto, and how much more time is that gonna take the officer off the street here and to get back on the street? Is it 2 officers? Is it 1 officer? So tell me about the staffing piece.
So it would only take, typically, it only will take 1 officer to transport to another jail or holding facility.
And how much increased time?
We looked at that a couple years ago. This is about the 3rd time we've looked at this possibility over the last decade. And I don't have those numbers right in front of me, but the way I looked at it, that $10,000 overtime would kind of wash that to some degree. And I think it would, what we would save would actually be more. I can't stand here and tell you, I apologize, I didn't get those numbers, but the time-wise, again, Cedar Hill is doing it, and they wouldn't go back. Is the best thing to do.
I'm just curious, because the length of time that that officer now who's on patrol is now booking in jail, went to DeSoto, taking that time there, and now we have less officers on the street. Would that then require us to beef up patrol board by having an additional officer?
Well, I think that opportunity is there anyway if you went with that solution, because we're hiring more people.
Right.
And we've been able to do that and do well here of late. And so as we bring those folks on, they will be in a situation we've got more people on the street.
But the difference in time that you're talking about is just that transit time. The booking time is still the same.
So once you
So
get them here-
even an officer that arrests someone in Duncanville and brings them to our jail,
Okay.
they're tied up at that jail for that booking period.
Yeah, okay.
So the booking time is the same.
Okay.
So you're really just talking about the difference in transport time from wherever they are in the city limit of Duncanville to here versus wherever they are in Duncanville to go to the DeSoto jail. So it's not a huge amount of difference. I mean, there is additional time because it takes longer to drive to DeSoto, but
Booking
again,
time is the same.
the booking time should be the same.
But you said you looked at that a while back. I like to just kind of look at that.
Yeah, I want to say it was 2018. I can get you some of those numbers. I will say that the feedback I've gotten from not only DeSoto, but from Cedar Hill, from Lancaster, is the booking time is very, very efficient at the Tri-City Jail. I don't know
See,
how
one
to
of the
compare
things
it.
at DeSoto, I've been there, not as a client.
Go ahead, explain. What color did you wear?
Yeah, I don't think so.
But they have video arraignment. The magistrate does video arraignment. He's not there, but they bring in the arrestee, I'll use the right term. And the judge is right there in video, and they do the thing virtually. And so we don't have that. So
Do we have that, right?
Yes. Yes. So we have video arraignment with the Dallas County.
Yeah.
Right.
What they have is arraignment through their magistrate locally. And so, and what they also have is they have a full-time dedicated magistrate, whereas we have part-time set of magistrates that rotate. And
So you're actually looking at some efficiencies in that.
But we did hire all of ours locally.
Yes, ma'am, all of our magistrates are.
Well, the magistrates are the judges, the
I
municipal
know,
court judges.
and they are here in Duncanville.
Right, but
Most
this
of
is
it.
only a small piece of what they do. They're
Right.
still doing all of the
Right,
other
unless
things.
we hired one full-time, but we haven't. They are part-time. But
Right.
my understanding was they didn't have that kind of traffic.
What kind of traffic?
To hire a full-time judge?
Yeah, for the jails to,
But the judges do all the other things too. I mean, they have court, they do the warrants, and, you know, especially, I mean, holding court is the biggest thing too. The magistrate doing the arraignment of prisoners is only a small portion of what our judges do. We still have a need for all 3 judges. Now, whether they're part-time or whether we need a full-time judge, I don't know. We have never looked at that since I've been here. But the fact is, we still have the need for our 3 judges. They just won't do this piece of it, or they may not, they may do some of it still, and they won't, but they may not do all of it. So that's why we looked at that cost of what they are doing right now with arraigning prisoners versus the Soto jail, who has a full-time magistrate to arraign prisoners, and looking at what we have paid our judges for that service versus now it's built into that cost. But it doesn't take away the fact
Maybe
we
that's
still need our
something that we
judges.
ought to look into, is what I'm saying, rather than having 3 part-time ones.
And we can do that, but that doesn't affect this part of it. because
But this is a 3-year contract?
It's 3, Chief Costa, you mind speaking to that?
So that's a 3-year contract with every year renewal. So we wanted to get, with our other cities, we do a 2-year contract and it's a 1-year renewal. To get started, we wanted to do a 3-year because the first year was going to be kind of a discounted rate. And so what we decided was, let's make it a 3-year contract, and then it's renewable every year. It automatically renews every year. If you didn't want to go along with whatever those costs would be, then you could opt out. Same with us, if we said, you know what, we don't want to take Duncanville prisons anymore, they're too much for Connecticut, so we're gonna opt out. But that hasn't happened. Everybody's been satisfied. If I can speak on the booking process, our jailers do all the booking for the officers. The officers come in, they drop the prisoner off to the jailer when they come in Sallyport. Right now, they're taking temperatures, they're assessing their health, and then they bring them in and they take care of all the booking. And the officer goes in, there's a room on the side where they can do their reports, they can do their PCs and their affidavits, and it's really streamlined more so that the officer gets in and out a lot quicker. A lot of times the prisoner is still being booked in with property and so on while the officer's back on the street and back on patrol.
So does that stuff stay at the DeSoto department?
That all stays with us. We take care of that prisoner from start to finish, and the officer goes on their way. We have video arraignment 3 times a day. So first thing in the morning, the judge will do a video arraignment. We'll then transport those prisoners to county jail that need to go, that have Class B or better. And the Class Cs will get released, put on a bond or whatever the payment schedule is and so on. And then the judge will do another arraignment during noontime, 1 o'clock, and then another one at 7, 8 o'clock at night. He's also available on call, so if we had an unruly prisoner, we wanted to make sure that we got him in and out, or out, in and out quickly to the county. He's on call 3 in the morning. We can call him and he will do an arraignment. We also have a bond clerk in there during the day, 5 days a week. And right now, that bond clerk will handle all the money that comes through, and will also handle any other arraignments. If we have someone that comes in the middle of the day, she's there, they'll handle the arraignment, she'll take care of all the paperwork. We've really got it down to a pretty good science where we move prisoners in and out. We don't want them there any longer than what we need them because of the liability, and we want to get them out as quick as possible.
Do you write your own bonds, or is it a private company?
No, the judge will set the bond on it.
Oh, so you're talking about just...
Just a magistrate
Okay.
bond. But he'll magistrate everybody, even though it's not necessary that he does Class B and better. He still will, and then we can get them out there. If he sets a bond, they can still get bonded out at night if they're there.
Where are you from?
I'm from Texas.
No, you are.
North Texas.
Where are you from?
Massachusetts.
Massachusetts? Wow.
So what's the
Long way.
anticipated transition time for something like this?
Transition for this year, we can do this, it wouldn't take us that long to do. Our jail is set up that we can handle whatever prisoners you give us. It would be just the administrative workout, probably within a month, we could transition over. If we said we're doing it in October, then obviously we've got plenty of time to do that. And it would be seamless. It's just a matter of getting the officers used to coming that way and dropping their prisoners off in the process.
So we executed by an MOU. How is the money moved between the city, the ILA?
Yeah, it would be through an interlocal agreement. And right now, our budget that we were presenting to you and discussing with you, our budget is based on the way things are currently. If you are open to this, then we will adjust our budget accordingly, and we will move forward with the process of the MOU and so forth to effect this October 1. We would prefer to wait until, to make it with the fiscal year. It gives us time with our employees, gives us time to work through everything. But what we needed to know from you is if you're open to this idea, then we're going to adjust our budget based on this game plan, and then we'll start that process to make it effective October 1.
So this does need to be an agenda item for next council.
No, it's budget.
No, it's not. Your agenda item will be when we bring the MOU
That's
back
what
to
I'm
you.
saying. To execute the MOU is still a council agenda item.
That's correct, but it doesn't need to be next week. We just need to know so we can start building this into the FY21 budget.
So we just
We'll
need
work
to-
through it. We've already started working on the MOU with Chief Costa, and so we'll just have to get it to the attorneys to review. We'll schedule it on the agenda here as soon as we can, but it's not, you don't have to do it tonight, you don't have to do it next week.
But all you need from us tonight is a straw man poll.
No.
I need to know your consensus on whether you're open to doing this so that we can move forward.
Can we talk about any other possibilities?
Well, what other possibilities, Councilman?
Well, just what I said, and you said we'll talk about it later.
No, I didn't, no, well, because the idea of a full-time municipal court judge is not hinging upon whether we go to a tri-city jail. Again, that is just a small piece of what that judge does. And what we're talking about is the overall cost savings of moving the jail to a tri-city jail. We can still look at whether it makes sense for the municipal court judge to be one full-time employee. But
That's not
it's
even what I'm talking about. I'm talking about having the facilities. We have facilities here that we're not using.
Oh, well, yes, I know that. But we're not talking about the Eon building tonight. I mean, that's...
But this was the first we heard of this. So what I'm talking about is that we talk about everything, about the possibilities of using it.
But if this is the right thing to do in terms of what the city needs, there's automatically 1,800 square feet that becomes
Yeah,
available.
and then we
for
would
the
come
police
back
department.
with how to use that
We have a
space.
huge building that's sitting there empty that is that we own, that's
So,
on our
Mayor,
facilities.
in terms of the straw poll, I'm interested.
Let me just say
Don,
one
I'd like to
thing
speak
to
to
your
Thomas.
question, Mr. Cooks. And
That's
Chief
fine.
Costa
Yeah, you
reminded
don't have
me
to
of
do
this.
that.
So currently, if we bring somebody into our facility, the arresting officer must stay there until, during the booking process, to ensure the safety of the prisoner as well as the public service officer. So they have to stay there during the booking process. In this case, they don't, so that saves 20 or 30 minutes. right
Okay,
there.
I thought that you said the process would take longer. And I think what I'm hearing Councilman Jameson is saying, which I totally like the process of DeSoto, but I think what I'm hearing her saying is giving us something else to look at, meaning that if you did use another facility, just like you weighed out what the cost of DeSoto was and the cost of what we're doing now, I think she's saying, look at one where we did it on our own with expanding the facility. If we're gonna see it's gonna cost more.
We don't need to expand the jail.
Okay.
We've got plenty of room in the jail. That's
Okay.
not the issue.
Okay. That's
So
what
the
I
jail-
thought.
What is the issue? What is the issue?
It's saving money. Going to a tri-city jail will save this city money in operating our own jail. And then we can take that space and reallocate it to the police department for other needs that they have that they currently don't have the space for.
Like?
Storage.
Storage, evidence storage.
But they're gonna do the
records.
storage.
No,
Evidence storage for our department.
But I thought that you were gonna do the storage.
We do the property, which will go, as they're talking about, crime scene and evidence investigation.
So we're running out of room in the police department.
Yeah.
And so this will free up 1,800 square feet of space that we can use for other uses in the police department. We don't need to expand the jail though.
Well, I wasn't talking about in terms of just the jail, I was talking about the overall operation.
Well, you
How
remember
many
we
square
talked
feet, how many
before.
square feet is Eon?
It's not Eons, it's the
No, wait,
Duncanville building.
I don't
It all comes
remember, but I
into
mean, we
play.
talked, so you remember,
Used to be our library.
so you remember we did the facility study a couple of years ago. And we showed you that long range, we would need more room for these, for City Hall and for PD. Well, but at the time, Eon was in there, and we had the jail. So if we move the jail out, that frees up some space there. Now we've got this building, so yes, we should look at that for city facilities, or we can look at it for the leasing it out to
Right.
private sector.
That Eon building should be looked at for revenue, not for.
But that's your all's
space.
call. But those are options. And
This is-
if you use it for city facilities, it can forego expanding the building, or you may decide you want to use it for revenue. That's your all's call. But what this does with the jail is it will address some immediate space needs that we have, and it saves us money overall for the city by combining our operations and reduces our costs.
As we see over here, we need to put stuff like that back on the tax rolls, not all.
Exactly.
We can see all our problems.
But what we're talking about tonight is jail.
It's gonna be
And
on-
see what we got.
It's going to be on the tax rolls based on the movement that we're
We're
going to
gonna
have.
have a
It's kind
job,
of
though.
weird to give away this is the complex for the city. And we had this one point right here. They're crowded.
And
They
they're not
have been.
going to be crowded if they can free up 1,800 square
I'm not
feet.
talking
by-
about just the police department, I'm talking about the finance department. There's all sorts of departments back there that are sitting on top of each other.
Well, that would be, that's not, so we've not looked at that. But that's something, if you want us to look at for that building, we can come in with some options, but that's not part of the budget discussion. We don't have the money to do anything to renovate it anyway, even if that was your all's desire. And even right now, we still have a tenant there that we have not resolved that issue.
Right.
So there's still a lot of things we have to do to get to the point, but that is certainly something we were gonna come to you with at that point to say, what do you want us to do with this building now? And those are the options. We use it for our own use, or we lease it out. But that's your all's call.
Because we also have the building across the street.
I understand that as well.
Oh,
Yes.
sell that one, rent that one.
If we don't know, we don't know where that's at right now, but yes, supposedly.
Oh, so that one hadn't gone through
So,
either?
do we have consensus that we ask staff to take a look at the MOU, build the MOU, bring it to us, and take a good hard look at this thing?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And what I would say again, and as y'all ponder this decision, we can do that certainly, is we've got employees that possibly may have to transition. And, again, that's very delicate, so, and DeSoto and the other cities are waiting to see what our decision is. So if you could at least ponder that as you weigh your decision.
Well, I think I heard we have consensus from
You
the
have-
council to
you
move
have
forward with the
consensus to
Tri-City
move
Jail. And we will move accordingly, and we will work with the budget to that extent.
Thank
And
you all
we
for your
will
presentation.
look at the building's use as a
Thank you.
point, sometime we'll come back with a discussion on that.
Just keep everybody correct.
And I
Thank
think
you all for coming.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you.
Thank
Doing a
you.
great job down tonight, by the way, on your event.
Oh, yes, it went very well, yeah.
Yeah, great.
That two of them there was great.
Yeah, great job.
Good lifetime
Just
to do
use their
it.
council too.
All right,
And their
thanks,
city
Steve.
manager.
Rich, can you make it in 12 minutes?
Do my best. So,
Tri-City
we need to
Jail.
move into talking about Senate Bill 2. I'm not going to bore you since you have the handouts with all of these specific dates, but I'll just tell you if you adopt a tax rate that's less than the voter approval rate, which used to be the old rollback rate, the calendar isn't too terribly different from what it used to be. We can kind of proceed on, there's a few very subtle differences. I won't belabor those at the moment, but just to note that it's not too different. If you do decide that you want to go above the voter approval tax rate, everything gets escalated. And basically, by July 17th, you have to have your proposed budget filed with the city secretary. And by the 27th, we should get the stuff from the appraisal district that they're supposed to deliver a certified estimate of taxable value or the certified appraisal roll. It looks like that they would only be able to give us an estimate at that time. And then August 3rd, we would have to do a public hearing. And essentially, you'd have to complete the budget adoption process by August 17th. That's probably before you're going to get the certified roll this year because of the COVID. And then after you adopt that budget on the 17th, you essentially would be waiting until November 3rd to the election to find out if it's going to pass. So what I did up here is I provided a chart so that you could take a look at the 3.5% cap. Right now, from last year, the voter approval rate was 0.751. Our current tax rate 0.743447, and so it would be about a 5.7% decrease with the 3.5% property tax cap. If under the disaster declaration provision and SB2, you wanted to go.
I'm sorry, I'm still trying to figure this cap thing out, I'm sorry. But, so when the taxable value goes up, our rate goes down.
That's correct.
Correct.
So that's where, okay, I'm getting it now. I'm
Inverse
gonna get this.
Because what-
Another year on the council, I'm gonna get this.
Because what the 3.5% is based on is that we cannot raise revenue by more than 3.5%.
I'm getting it now, finally. Sorry.
It's
You're fine.
confusing.
Regardless of value, we cannot, we can't go up more than 3.5%.
So we could say to our taxpayers, we've lowered our tax rate.
And so, based on what I've calculated,
Which is kind of
and
it is. But
again,
it's
it's,
okay.
my estimation of the new voter approval rate under the disaster declaration is only an estimate. I'm not a certified tax guy, and so all I can do is go through with the very best of my skills and come up with an estimate. So that could be off a little bit. But essentially, that would be about a 1.3% drop versus the 5.7 and 3.5. Just giving you those percentages as a comparison. So under the voter approval rate, and what we need to have a straw vote on tonight is whether we're going to stay under that voter approval rate. In the official calculation of that will be made by Dallas County and sent to us. The estimated general fund tax revenue would be $17,917,000 at the 3.5% tax cap. At the 8% cap, the difference, of course, between those two would be an additional $838,793.
And so,
Which is similar to what you started with tonight. That's what we
Correct.
started there.
I told you it'd be a little bit different because I wasn't taking off the 8%. But
so let me kind of also explain a little bit here why we're also bringing this up too. We would normally, as whether you're even open to going above the cap. What's different this year is that under SB2, there's a provision that allows cities to go up to as high as the 8% cap if there is a disaster declaration. And there has been a disaster declaration by the governor. So council can do that, elect to go up to 8% if you enact that by taking that disaster provision. We're not advocating that you do, but I do think it's important that you know that that's there. Some cities have considered it. I think Dallas considered it. They chose not to. They chose to stay at the 3.5%. That is there. If you choose to do that, then there are some steps that have to be taken, including passing a resolution saying that you're going to take advantage of that provision. And then you have to follow that calendar that Richard was showing you, which is an accelerated calendar for the budget and so forth. So that is there. You don't have to go to a full 8%. You can go anywhere in between that 3.5 to 8, but it is a possibility to do under that provision. If you stay at the 3.5% tax cap, then you go to that, use that other calendar that Richard showed you, which is more in line with what we have shown. And as we have shown you tonight, the budget is based on the 3.5% tax cap. But it is up to you all if you want to consider that or not. We need to know tonight whether that is, you're not going to consider it, you're going to stay at 3.5%, or if you want to consider going above.
I can't see us going to our voters and asking for a tax increase. I can't see that.
I'm for 3.5.
Yep, me too.
Yeah.
And
Because the budget is already built on 3.5, you explained
And
how
I-
we still
and I
have a
fully-
72-day, we just have a still 72-day balance with that. Even with the decreases, running lean all the way through, the best thing I think for the
We
city.
agree, and that's why I say I'm not advocating that, I don't recommend it, and I felt like you probably would not want to, but we had to have, I want to make sure that you all were aware, we understand. And that's why we base the budget on 3.5%.
Very wise.
That, I'm
Very
assuming
wise.
that the consensus and the straw vote is to stay with the voter approval
Yep.
rate as the
3.5.
It is.
we will move forward.
Very good.
And that is all we had for tonight. Tomorrow night, we'll be talking about the utility fund, all other funds, bond project update, and some things related to the bond projects.
Okay.
And tomorrow we start at 6,
6 o'clock tomorrow.
not 5,
Right here again.
right here.
Okay, thank you very much. We are adjourned at 8:26.
Good job.